Hi, I'm Harry Pinder, here from the Facebook Live studio at CHOGM 2018. It is day 3, and I'm excited to have my guest here, Caleb from Belize. So I know you're going to tell us a little bit about what you do.
I run around the world giving trouble to politicians and straightening their backbone a bit. No, I'm kidding. I run the oldest and only LGBT policy and advocacy organization in Belize. We're over a decade old. And we've taken the lead on LGBT issues using litigation, transnational strategy of educating parliamentarians and in spaces of power across the Americas, at the UN, in the Commonwealth, around LGBT issues.
Great. And so thank you so much. Welcome to CHOGM, of course. I mean, it's it's going to be a really, really great last day. And I know sort of you come all the way from Belize to CHOGM. So why is CHOGM so important to you?
It's the last bastion of hope, if you will. A lot of the discussion has been around terms like Western imposition, expectation of LGBT issue, but for me, I take the position that the only expectation that I've taken place is the expectation of homophobia. With regards to the term Western imposition, for me, when you look around the Commonwealth and you assess their constitution, not a single one of these constitutions ever say accept LGBT citizens. It speaks to all citizens when fundamental rights are discussed in the preamble and in the list that is in each national constitutions. There's other limited discussion which doesn't take place, which is the idea that Commonwealth citizens aren't governed by individual morality. If that were the case, there would be no stability in any country across the Commonwealth. Each country is governed by a constitutional framework, which I'd like to describe simply as constitutional morality. And for me, that simply says that all citizens are equal under the law, and they can defend themselves in court, no matter how marginalized they are. And as such, that constitutional morality automatically recognizes a category of groups that are diverse, that are citizens. And though constitutions don't necessarily say sexual orientation or gender identity, the fundamental rights and more precisely court ruling over several years have shown that fundamental rights apply to all, and that this is an issue of governance, good governance issues within the context of Commonwealth.
Great, and I see, because you're saying it's sort of the last beacon of hope, which is great because you see the Commonwealth as a very positive thing, as a very positive group of states to be able to sort of make a change towards this.
Granted, what I've come to learn, though, that change don't come without those who feel the pain leading the way in doing their education and being very strategic in the way they deliver concerns in spaces of power or with engaging the political leaders. One of the things I come to learn from my own lessons with litigation is that if the state recognizes the value of good governance, their role really is to arbitrate a debate between two opposing opponents. Their job isn't to amplify the problem by encouraging their leaders to use incendiary language. Their responsibility is not there to amplify conflict or amplify the oppression of the marginalized. Their role there is to ensure that there's healthy and constructive response to the issue of how do you advance protection for the marginalized in a way that is appropriate and improve quality of life of all. But the bottom line of all this is that our leaders across the Commonwealth need to recognize that while there's a majority, the value is this: the will of the majority may have concern, but it may never vote on the rights of the minority and oppress the minority, for it undermines the basic concept of what a constitutional protection means for each citizen.
Great. And so, everyone has come all the way here. We have viewers, obviously, who, maybe weren't able to attend. What would be your message to them in terms of, obviously everyone's come here and they're having all these amazing discussions, but they're going to go home at one point. And actually, there's a big thing about actually sort of ending the talk and starting the action. What would be some of the things that you'd like people to take action on?
Well, let's be clear. Many of our people in the Commonwealth have bills, mortgages, education, jobs, children, and a host of responsibilities. So for those who can have a conversation with those places where they work in rooms of power, that's a start. For those who don't know anything about the issue, using the worldwide library called Google, that can start the conversation of knowledge transfer. For those who know nothing about the law, they can but they are students of law, they can volunteer the time to look at what the court ruling has done within the context of the Commonwealth and share that with those advocates who need it to educate themselves. Within the community itself, it's a more challenging. Why? Because there's this kind of Stockholm syndrome which exists. Love your oppressors, don't rock the boat, cooperate as much as possible, and exist in an invisible way. For them, the issue is very basic. Learn about yourself first, and then amplify that knowledge to those who do not have access to the same information. A large part of this is not so much revolutionary, but introspective to understand that individuals are responsible for amplifying the value of human rights, and that those individuals collectively then generate a demand for that value at the governance level.
And I think that's really clear. So the next, couple of days, the world leaders are going to go into a room far, far away in a retreat where there's going to be no advisors, very closed doors, and they're going to have frank conversations about what they want the Commonwealth to do next. What would you like the outcome of that to be?
Well, one very specific hope is that Commonwealth leaders will recognize that they're arbitrators of an issue. It was my foreign minister who said once in Paraguay at an Organization of American States meeting that governments are arbitrators of rights. In the same way, there was a professor in Washington, D.C., who speaks of the federal government is not there to expand the rights of citizens. It is there to ensure that the rights are not eroded. And so once you recognize the balance, the push and pull within the governance structure, you then begin to give life to the idea that citizens are at the center of improving the quality of life, and that government create the space. There need not be a difficult discussion on how the LGBT issue is to be responded to, because over time, hearts and mind need to change. For me, I've been in this work for over a decade, and it took a decade to make progress. And so it's a slow-moving part of that discussion. The other thing is, we all joke about politicians don't spines are curved, and you need to help them straighten it a little. But more importantly, beyond the politician side, I think politicians are also human beings, and as human beings, they carry a conscience and can connect to people on a personal level when they're in private. So conversations about how do you advance the humanity of your citizens, or in this case, the humanity of your governance, is something I would throw to them as a message. For me, your humanity is the ability to feel the pain of a complete stranger. And if you can do that, you can do simple things to at least alleviate what that pain is. And for me, I go back to the message that each leader have a responsibility to arbitrate this particular issue or any other issue that affect the marginalized.
Great. And yeah, and I think it's so important understanding actually that there are people behind that. I think that's something that's sometimes missed in some of the especially in advocacy and policy. What so you have young people who want to sort of get involved and to do things. What sort of spurred you on to continue to do youth advocacy and policy, and I guess what advice would you give?
Well, for me, I discovered along the way, you perpetuate your treatment by remaining silent, and I refuse to be silent about this issue, so I've taken a lot of risk. On the other end, when I had an introspective look of going to buy and being insulted, threatened, or mocked, or everything else in between for just being honest, you begin, from my perspective and where I come from, the statement is, You expect politicians to be honest, but you expect gay people to lie. There's a kind of contradiction in such an existence. If we're talking about good governance, then you could expect citizens to be honest. But more precisely, I decided upon reflection that if I'm going to be mistreated, mocked, threatened, insulted for being me and being an honest citizen as part of the governance structure, then I prefer experience that in doing something I believe in. And I've come to recognize that it is my responsibility to live my life on my terms, and nobody will dictate what that is. And so I've taken control of what it means to be a human being, but more precisely, to give value to the idea that my humanity is much more than the insults, the threat, the mockery, and the disrespect that comes my way.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us. And are you going to be speaking, or have you spoken already?
Well, I was on a panel on legal reform,
Great.
and later on I'll be discussing the National Human Rights Institute framework across in Parliament.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, and I'm sure we look forward to hearing what you have to say. And thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you at the next interview.